Alright, so I think everyone's familiar with the standard Corsi Rosenthal box. They're really effective and useful, but there's a couple problems that we tend to see. They're kind of bulky in size, 20 by 20. They can be loud when the fan's on. And most importantly, the filters, once they're dirty, make the device next to useless. It's not too hard to take a box cutter, cut the top of the fan off, get 4 new filters and make it again. But it's one of those 20-minute projects that tend to not get done. So I want to see if I can improve on that and make one where the filters actually slide in and out. So this is the newer model. I used a somewhat smaller filter, 12 by 20 by 1. They came in blue this time, which is a nice change. But basically now the device fits in a good size. It can roll. I've got it on a battery, so it's portable. The filters slide in and out. There we go. And this is what the frame looks like without any filters on. On top, rather than using a regular 20-inch fan, just got 4 computer fans. And put the lid back on. And here's the same thing without the fans in it yet. And basically that way, when these filters go bad, I can just slide them in and out rather than thinking about doing the job and then not. Also, I use these in my medical office, and these are pretty much silent, so they don't interfere with the patient-doctor relationship. And the size also, just about right. So, if you hang out, we'll see how to make this thing.
So it basically just starts off with a bunch of 2x1s, which are actually not 2x1, but 1.5 by 3/4 of an inch. It sounds like 24 feet's a lot, but each of those are about 10 feet long. So about 3 is enough for each device. You then want to cut them down to a bunch of 11.5-inch pieces. The reason you want them to be 11.5 is because that way it matches the size of the filter. The filter is claimed to be 20 by 12 by 1, but they're not exactly accurate either. The actual size of the filters are 19.5 by 11.5 by 3/4 of an inch. So the 11.5-inch side ends up matching the filter size of 11.5 inch as well. The next thing you're going to need are 1 foot by 1 foot plywood boards. I got some 1/4-inch ones. They seem to be sturdy enough without being too heavy. We will see where those come into play in a second, but first we have to make the frame. This is how the frame's going to look before it's nailed together. I just wanted to point out the structure here. You have each post running up into the next post. This is how the left side of the base looks, and here is how the right side looks. And now we're going to get some nails and get going. As you can see, I put 2 nails into that first corner and then rotated it and put 2 more nails into the next corner. Once you have the whole bottom frame nailed together, it looks something like this, basically a square, and the size of it is just a little bit more than 12 inches. It's the 11.5 plus 3/4 of an inch, so 12.25. And this ends up working out quite nice with the 12-inch boards because there's some extra room on the edge, and as always, it's better to be lucky than good. Once you flip the piece over and put the nails in, you find that the bottom frame has just about 1/8 of an inch overhang on the standard 12-inch by 12-inch pieces of plywood. All right, and this is the base of our unit, and next we are going to make the lid. The first thing you'll notice with the lid is that it's slightly different. There are 4 massive holes in it. Of course, those are for the computer fans for the output, so we're going to have to construct that piece first. But I also did want to show in this image that the structure of the base frame, the orientation needs to be the same as the frame of the upper side. And you can see that because I stacked the 2 on top of each other. And in the next picture here, I'll show a close-up of that. There we go. So they're basically just left and right hand mirror images of each other.
Okay, so this part's a bit tricky, getting the four circles lined up so they are equally aligned to let the fans through. Takes a moment depending on how OCD you want to be. The circles are about exactly 135 millimeters. The fans I got are 140 millimeters. That way I figured it would make a nice housing for them. But to get 135 millimeter circles centered correctly took some doing. I only did it once. Here's the example of how I did it. This is the underside of the first panel that I made with the circles. I think, as you can tell, I tried to identify the center of the square, and then I made squares and triangles so that I knew what the center of each of the smaller squares were. Made some margins around them, and then eventually I took a compass in the middle and drew the circles out, and it came out reasonably okay. These are the first two lines that I made to find the center of the box. After that, I did the uprights, and there we go. And then finally, I made the smaller axes to identify the middle of each circle. And there we go. If you want it in inches, I got you covered, but let's get getting to the cutting part. What you can't see in this picture is that I've actually got about 3 of those boards clamped together just to do a few at once, save some time. You're going to need about 2, or not about, you're going to need 2 of these boards with the circles for each filter, so it may help to do them both at once. Here's another angle so you can see the thickness. And basically I just drilled some starting holes wide enough to fit the jigsaw through, and then took the jigsaw around. And here's a finished product of the board nailed down to the frame, and the top frame resting on top of the bottom frame to show that they match in orientation. So let's pause there for a second, just to say what we basically have now are the 2 pieces of frame that the filters are going to ride on and under. The bottom frame is what the bottom edge of the filter is going to slide on, and the top of the frame is what the top edge of the filter is going to slide under. What we need to create now is something to keep the filters from falling back or forward. To keep them from falling back, we'll have the uprights. To keep them from falling forward and out, we're going to put some 11.5 inch additional wood pieces on each of these frames to hold the filters in, as you'll see. I guess it's easier shown than described, so here we go. Let's see some pictures. So there I am holding the wood somewhat up and out, so the filters can enter in from that direction. The pieces are extended out a little bit to provide a little bit of a lip to slide the filters in. And then on the other side of that piece, the wood comes up a little bit short of matching up on purpose, because that way you do have access to the seams between 2 adjoining filters in case you need to adjust them or tape them as you please. In regards to how high up to put the wood, I didn't feel like measuring, so I just took an extra piece of wood and slid it underneath and used that as the measurement so that the filter piece is raised by exactly that much. And here's what it looks like once it's been nailed in. Here is another picture of basically the same thing. So here's a shot from the top, so you can see the lip offset by pretty much exactly 3/4 of an inch, which is the size of a beam, and you'll see how that lines up in a second when I put the next piece on over here, and then the last piece, or the third piece over there, and then finally the 4th over here. And again, I didn't feel like measuring it. I just kind of lined it up with where the edge of the next piece would be with this line here. That way the protruding end of each piece ends lined up with the edge of the lip on the other side. I think the lines make more sense than my explanation. Okay, looking good. And now we got to do the same thing for the top piece so that the lips are protruding to the same side so that the filters can slide in. Here's a picture of the 2 of them stacked together. I'm not sure how much this image helps, but the idea again is that you want them to be mirror images of each other and for the filters to slide in evenly. Okay, so now we're on to our next challenge. This is the base unit again, and we're going to next focus on getting the uprights to be correctly placed. That might take a minute of explanation, but I hope it makes sense in the end. First things first, we're using the same 2x1s that we've been using the whole project. These ones are a little bit longer. These uprights are each about 22 inches long. Is 22 for a reason. The mathematicians at home might notice that the 1.5 inch pieces of frame plus the 19.5 inch filters would add up to 22.5 inches, but there's a 1/2 inch gap for a reason, and we'll see it allows a lot of play later on when you're trying to get the right size filter to fit. All right, and now you're looking at the single most important piece of the build. Yes, that tiny piece of cardboard. Apparently my math is no good. The standard 2x1s are 3/4 of an inch, 0.75 inches. Well, apparently some of the filters are 0.78 inches, and I thought 3/100 of an inch would be no big deal of a difference, but I was very wrong. Even if they're exactly 0.75, the filters that is, they still won't fit quite perfectly snug, because when you apply the paint, that takes up some space too, and then all of a sudden the filters get too tight and you can barely even remove them. So by adding that little bit of cardboard between the frame and the uprights, it allows just a little bit of more space to slide the filters in. I sadly had to learn that the hard way, and it sucked. So here's that piece of cardboard. Elmer's glued to the corner. In that ratio there, you'll see why. And basically it's to match the shape of the uprights right there. Now you may have been wondering why you see the wheel there with the wheel attachment plate on that same screen. And it's because I am not an engineer and I don't exactly know what I'm doing. Don't know if this was a good idea or bad, but I wanted to use the wheel attachment as a way to help anchor the uprights in so they're more sturdy. And I'll try and show you what I mean here. So back to this image, you just want to trace around that piece of scrap wood so that in the end you can see where the wood upright would be, like here. Now why did I mark that spot about 2/3 to 3/4 to the edge of that trace? Basically because I'm going to drill a hole and it's going to line up with the wheel plate for our attachment. So here is the hole drilled, and here is it on all 4 sides. And then what we're going to see is why exactly. This is the wheel unit now sitting on top of the base. Clearly it's going to go underneath, but I'm just having it on top for now just to try and line things up. You'll see that the 2 holes on the top are going to easily drill into the frame unit of the base. It's that 3rd hole on the bottom left that we're hoping to aim directly into a meaty chunk of the upright. Seeing it on an angle helps a little bit to see where the screw will come up from the bottom through the upright. And now it's time to flip this thing over and drill some more holes. As you can see, I just took the frame of the wheel unit and I lined up the top right hole with the hole that's already there. And then I drew in the 2 on the left, which are going to drill and line up quite nicely with the frame. So eventually I'm going to drill some more of these finder holes with a small bit. And I neglected to mention the dimensions of the wheel. I'll include that in the comments, but basically it is a Amazon purchase. I'm pretty sure I went way over the top with the heavy-duty wheels. I don't think you need that heavy-duty of a wheel, but I kind of like the way they look, and it rolls really smoothly. So these are the screws I would eventually use. So I had to upsize from the little finder holes to a much larger hole to match the size of the screw. In this particular instance, I think I guessed, and I used, where's that bit? I used a 5/32 bit, and then I just went ahead and widened all the holes, and here's what it looks like after it's done. All right, so now we're going to try and actually get those uprights to stay. This isn't really the best picture, but I did just simply put the uprights where they're going to be, and on the side I was able to sink a couple nails into the side of the wood to keep the uprights temporarily in position before the rest of the securing got done. So then I just flipped it over and I put the uprights either on the ground or on a scrap piece of wood so that I would have proper access to the bottom of the bottom panel. And then just for some extra securing, I put a piece of scrap wood there next to the hole so I know where the beam was on the underside. I made a mark where I would surely hit pay dirt, and then I sunk a nail in there to hold it now from the bottom and the side before the screwing of the wheels goes in. So there, I've got the wheel plate all lined up. You'll notice that the fourth hole on the bottom left isn't being used. My figure 3 was enough to anchor it down, and I just took some screws, the ones that came with it, and drilled those in, or actually not drilled, screwdrivered them in, and there we go. We now have wheel attachment, and this is basically how it looks with the wheels on. The uprights are primarily screwed in from the bottom through that one hole through the plate, but also there are nails, one from the bottom and a couple on the sides of each, holding it nice and secure. And we got some nice clearance on the bottom. It rolls pretty smoothly, and now it's time to head toward the top unit. So perhaps you've already made this unit. If not, now's the time to put the rails up on all 4 sides to hold the filters in. And also don't forget the little pieces of cardboard that go on the edge to give a little extra clearance. And then just set it on top. In this picture, it is not attached. The top unit is just resting on the uprights. It's not nailed in because there's going to be some adjustment to fit the filters properly. On this view, you can see that the area circled sits flush against that top piece of plywood, but when the filters are in, you'll see that gap shows up, and that's to make sure they have some space to fit snugly. You'll see here the beams are not perfectly straight. It doesn't go to the corner, but with just some gentle pressure, I'm able to push it right into the corner there, and then from the outside, put some nails in, and there we go. Before I did nail it though, I probably lifted up on the upper frame by about 1 millimeter or 2, just so it slides easier, and I'll highlight that spot. All right, and things are coming along nicely. The top piece is on. Here's what it looks like from above and from the side, and it's time really to take the filters out now to take a look at the frame. From the top, this is where the fans are going to go, blowing air up and out of the box. I didn't take any pictures when I was building it, so I took some after the fact here. The computer fans I got come as a pair, and they're wired together, so there's only one cable, one USB cable, just to keep the number of wires to a minimum. You can absolutely get 4 individual fans, but I just thought it'd be easier this way, and they're really just resting on top. Eventually, I did apply some double-sided tape to keep them from moving, but at first they're just really sitting there. And I let the wires go through the hole itself. The connections down below. There are the 2 other fans for all 4. I've got 2 USBs to connect. You can use plugs if you want to. I like to use the actual USBs because I can plug those into an actual battery, which you saw earlier, so this thing can be wireless, and then I can have the battery plugged in series to the wall as needed. All right, we are almost done. We have to build one last thing. Hopefully you already have this piece made. When you cut the circles into the top piece, there's supposed to be 2 for each device, and this is the second one here. It's going to sit on top of the fans, just so it has a nice housing. Of course, it's not going to sit there without some help, so I had to put some sides on this piece. Basically, I measured about 2 1/4 inches, cut some pieces of wood, and just nailed them right in there. And then it sits on top, and it's a nice little case. And there's the measurement, if you don't trust me. And then I'm going to slide in some filters. Note the airflow direction. The filter slides in all the way up until where the next one's going to be entered in from. So we'll slide the second one into this side, and that's what it looks like slid in. If you like, you can put some tape there, but it is not necessary. From the other side, looks like this, and we'll slide in the last 2 filters. And now we're going to go back in time so I can actually paint it. One of my main concerns was keeping paint out of the grooves. So on this one there on the left, I painted it with the old dirty filters in there to keep paint out. And this one on the right, I put some old pieces of wood in those grooves to keep the paint out. I could have just not been so lazy and used actual blue painter's tape, and it would have come out probably better, but this is what I tried. And definitely don't forget to apply the blue painter's tape around the wheels to keep them clean, because you don't want a bunch of acrylic gooky paint getting in those. All right, and then here we have the finished product all ready to go, spinning around nicely, and now finally in its place in the office. And this little filter can turn over the air in a small doctor's room pretty quickly, but more importantly, it was just fun to build. So thank you for watching.